As a freelance worker who often spent weekdays alone, I decided to treat myself to a camping trip one weekend. I found a secluded spot not far from civilization and set up my tent, looking forward to a few days of peace and quiet in the great outdoors. Little did I know that my solitude would soon be interrupted by the presence of an unexpected couple who had also chosen the same camping spot. At first, I didn't pay much attention to them, exchanging polite greetings and small talk when our paths crossed. But one night, as I sat by my campfire gazing up at the stars, I noticed a faint light flickering in the distance. Curiosity piqued, and I watched as the couple ventured into the dark forest, their lantern casting eerie shadows among the trees. Something about their mysterious excursion intrigued me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to follow them. Quietly slipping on my shoes, I made my way through the underbrush, trying to keep a safe distance so as not to be detected. However, as I crept closer, I suddenly lost sight of them amidst the dense foliage. I strained my ears, listening for any sign of their whereabouts. That's when I heard their hushed voices, muffled by the rustling leaves and twigs underfoot. Carefully treading in the direction of the sound, I finally caught sight of the couple, illuminated by the glow of their lantern, engaged in a strange activity. To my shock, they were digging a hole in the ground, their faces obscured by the darkness as they worked diligently. I watched from behind the cover of trees, unsure of what to make of their clandestine behavior. Just as I was about to confront them, a sudden noise escaped my lips, betraying my presence. Instantly, the man turned around, his eyes scanning the shadows with a menacing glare. My heart pounded in my chest as I saw the glint of a gun nestled in his grip, the cold metal reflecting the dim light of the lantern. Fear gripped me, and I knew I had to make a hasty retreat before things took a dangerous turn. Swiftly and silently, I retraced my steps back to my tent, praying that I hadn't been spotted. The night stretched on, filled with the eerie silence of the forest, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and twigs outside. I lay awake, haunted by the image of the gun and the unknown intentions of the couple I had stumbled upon in the dead of night. The morning broke, casting a pale light over the campsite as the first rays of dawn filtered through the trees. I emerged from my tent, pretending ignorance of the events that had transpired under the cover of darkness. The couple seemed to sense my unease, exchanging guarded glances as they packed up their belongings and prepared to leave. As they bid me a soft farewell, I watched them disappear into the forest, leaving behind a sense of unease that lingered in the air. Once they were out of sight, I knew I had to investigate the spot where they had been digging the night before. Determined to unravel the mystery, I made my way back to the secluded clearing, feeling a shiver run down my spine at the memory of the gun. Kneeling down beside the hole, I began to dig, my hands scrabbling against the earth as I searched for any clue that might explain the couple's suspicious behavior. Hours passed as I toiled beneath the hot sun, the sweat beading on my brow as I unearthed nothing but dirt and rocks. Frustration gnawed at me, mingling with a sense of dread as I realized that I might never discover the truth behind the couple's midnight activities. Had they been burying something? Or were they searching for buried treasure, driven by some insatiable desire for wealth or power? Lost in my thoughts, I failed to notice the passage of time, the hours slipping away as I dug in vain for answers that seemed to elude me at every turn. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, I knew it was time to give up the search and accept that some mysteries were not meant to be solved. Reluctantly, I filled in the hole, smoothing the dirt over with a heavy heart as I accepted defeat. The ground beneath my feet seemed to hold its own secrets, whispering of forgotten tales and hidden truths that would forever remain mysteries to me. With a heavy sigh, I packed up my belongings and prepared to leave the campsite behind, the memory of the couple and their cryptic actions still fresh in my mind. A few years ago, I decided to go camping with my two best friends, Sarah and Andrew. We were all excited to spend 2 nights in the wilderness, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The first night went by without any incidents. We set up our tents, made a campfire, roasted marshmallows, and shared ghost stories under the starry sky. On the second night, however, things took a turn for the worse. Andrew received a call from his mom, who needed him to come back to town for an emergency. Reluctantly, he packed up his stuff and left, promising to be back the next morning. Sarah and I decided to continue with our camping trip despite being a man down. We were having a great time, chatting and laughing as we settled into our sleeping bags for the night. As we drifted off to sleep, I heard what sounded like wolf howls in the distance. I brushed it off, thinking it was just the sounds of nature. But then, in the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat up, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I turned to Sarah, who was wide-eyed and trembling with fear. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "What was that?" We both knew that it wasn't a wolf howling this time. It sounded like a human scream. Panic set in as we realized that we were alone in the wilderness, with no one around to help us. We debated whether to stay put or investigate the source of the scream. Gathering our courage, we grabbed a flashlight and ventured out into the darkness, following the dirt road that led deeper into the forest. The beam of the flashlight illuminated the path ahead, casting eerie shadows on the trees that loomed overhead. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made us jump in fear. Suddenly, we heard the scream again, closer this time. Sarah and I exchanged a look of terror before breaking into a run in the opposite direction. The sound of the scream echoed through the trees, chilling us to the bone. Adrenaline fueled our escape as we ran back to our campsite, our hearts pounding in fear. Once we reached the safety of our tents, we huddled together, trying to make sense of what we had just experienced. Andrew's absence weighed heavily on us, and we wished he was there with us. The night felt never-ending as we listened for any signs of danger outside. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, we packed up our campsite in silence, our minds still reeling from the events of the night. We never did find out what or who had been screaming in the darkness, and we were grateful to leave the eerie silence of the wilderness behind us. It was a beautiful spring day in 2002 when I embarked on a camping trip with my 4 friends. We were all looking forward to escaping the hustle and bustle of our everyday lives and spending some quality time together in the great outdoors. The weather was perfect, the birds were chirping, and we were all in high spirits as we set up our campsite and settled in for the night. After a long week of work, we were all ready to unwind and have some fun. We spent the evening roasting marshmallows over the campfire, telling stories, and enjoying each other's company. As the night wore on, we eventually decided to call it a night and headed to our tents to get some rest. It was around 1 a.m. when I was startled awake by a rustling noise outside of our tent. I could hear whispering and the sound of footsteps approaching. Before I had a chance to react, 2 shadowy figures emerged from the darkness. My heart raced as I saw one of them brandishing a gun, and I immediately knew that this was not going to end well. "Who are you? What do you want?" my friend bravely demanded, but the intruders only responded with a sharp command to shut up. They proceeded to gather us all together in one place, their faces obscured by the darkness, and began to rummage through our belongings. I could feel the tension in the air as they rifled through our bags, their greedy hands snatching up our food and belongings. They seemed desperate, almost feral, as they devoured our snacks and demanded money. My heart sank as I realized that we were being robbed by these mysterious strangers in the dead of night. Despite our fear, we complied with their demands, handing over our phones, wallets, and even our watches. The intruders seemed relentless, their eyes glinting with a dangerous light as they continued to push us for more. It was a terrifying ordeal, and I felt a sense of helplessness wash over me as I realized just how vulnerable we were in that moment. As the events unfolded, my mind raced with thoughts of escape and survival. I could see the fear in my friends' eyes as we were held captive by these ruthless individuals. I knew that we had to think fast and come up with a plan to get out of this dangerous situation before things escalated even further. The tension in the air was palpable as the intruders grew more aggressive, threatening us with violence if we didn't comply with their demands. I could see the glint of the gun in the moonlight, its cold metal reflecting the fear in our eyes. We were at the mercy of these strangers, and it was a terrifying realization. As the hours passed, the situation grew more dire. The intruders began to grow impatient, their demands becoming more forceful and menacing. I could feel the panic rising in my chest as I struggled to remain calm and composed in the face of such danger. At one point, one of the intruders made a move towards one of my friends, and I knew that I had to act fast. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I mustered up the courage to confront them and plead for our safety. It was a risky move, but I knew that we had to do something before it was too late. To my relief, the intruders seemed taken aback by my sudden burst of bravery. They hesitated for a moment, giving me the opportunity to negotiate with them and try to defuse the situation. It was a risky gamble, but I knew that we had to try something to get out of this nightmare. After what felt like an eternity, the intruders finally relented and allowed us to leave. We wasted no time gathering our things and fleeing into the night, our hearts pounding with fear and adrenaline. We ran as fast as we could, not stopping until we reached the safety of the nearest police station.